Bedtime Bliss Stories. Take a deep breath in, hold it for a moment, and then slowly release it. With each breath, let go of any worries or distractions, and allow your mind and body to relax. Now I will tell you the amazing story about Captain Haddock's journey to redemption. Captain Haddock had always been a man of the sea. He loved the thrill of adventure, the wind in his hair, and the salty sea spray on his face. He had spent his entire life on the water, and he was content with that. He had no family, no obligations, and no regrets. Or so he thought. One day, everything changed. He received a letter from a woman claiming to be the mother of his long-lost son. Captain Haddock was shocked. He had no idea that he had a child. He was filled with regret and guilt for not being there for his son. He realized that he had made many mistakes in his life, and it was time to make things right. Thus began Captain Haddock's journey of redemption. He embarked on a quest to find his son and make amends for his past mistakes. It was not an easy journey. Captain Haddock faced many challenges and obstacles along the way. He had to confront his own demons and come to terms with his past. But he was determined to make things right. He was determined to become the father his son deserved. He was determined to redeem himself. This is the story of Captain Haddock's journey of redemption. It is a tale of love, forgiveness, and self-discovery. It is a story of a man's quest to make amends for his past mistakes and become a better person. It is a story that will inspire and touch the hearts of readers everywhere. Chapter 1: The Discovery. Captain Haddock was sitting in his cabin, going through his mail when he came across a letter that caught his eye. It was from a woman named Maria Rodriguez, claiming to be the mother of his long-lost son. Captain Haddock's heart skipped a beat. He had no idea that he had a child. He opened the letter and read it carefully. Maria explained that she had met Captain Haddock many years ago, when he had stopped in her hometown of Valparaiso, Chile. They had a brief affair, and she had become pregnant. She had tried to contact him, but he had sailed away, and she had never heard from him again. Maria went on to say that their son, Alejandro, was now a young man, and he had been asking about his father. She had decided to try to find him and bring him to Valparaiso to meet his son. Captain Haddock was stunned. He had never imagined that he had a child. He felt a sense of regret and guilt for not being there for his son. He realized that he had made many mistakes in his life, and it was time to make things right. He immediately set sail for Chile, determined to find his son and make amends for his past mistakes. Chapter 2: The Reunion. After several weeks at sea, Captain Haddock finally arrived in Valparaiso. He was nervous and excited to meet his son for the first time. He had no idea what to expect. Maria met him at the dock and took him to her modest home. She introduced him to Alejandro, who was a tall, handsome young man with his mother's dark eyes and his father's square jaw. Captain Haddock was overwhelmed with emotion. He could see himself in Alejandro's face, and he felt a surge of pride and love for his son. He embraced Alejandro and apologized for not being there for him. Alejandro was understandably wary of his father at first. He had grown up without him, and he was not sure what to make of this stranger who claimed to be his father. But as they talked and got to know each other, Alejandro began to see that his father was a kind and generous man who genuinely wanted to make things right. Over the next few days, Captain Haddock spent a lot of time with Alejandro. They went on walks along the beach, played cards, and talked about their lives. Captain Haddock told his son about his adventures at sea and the mistakes he had made. Alejandro listened intently and began to see his father in a new light. As the days went by, Captain Haddock realized how much he had missed out on by not being there for his son. He saw how much Alejandro had grown up without him, and he felt a deep sense of regret. But he was determined to make things right. He promised Alejandro that he would be there for him from now on, no matter what. He vowed to be the father that Alejandro deserved. And with that, a new chapter in Captain Haddock's life began. He had found his son and had started on a journey of redemption. Chapter 3: Facing the Past. With Alejandro by his side, Captain Haddock set sail once again, but this time it was different. He was not chasing after treasure or adventure, he was on a mission to make amends for his past mistakes. As they sailed, Captain Haddock opened up to Alejandro about his troubled past. He told him about his struggles with alcoholism and how it had affected his relationships and his life. Alejandro listened patiently and encouraged his father to continue on his path of redemption. He could see how much his father was trying to change, and he was proud of him. But Captain Haddock knew that facing his past was not going to be easy. He still had a lot of demons to confront, and he was not sure if he was ready to do it. One day, they came across an old pirate ship that had been abandoned for years. Captain Haddock recognized the ship immediately. It was the ship of his former friend and fellow pirate, Red Rackham. As they explored the ship, memories flooded back to Captain Haddock. He remembered the days when he and Red Rackham were the most feared pirates on the seas. He also remembered the terrible things they had done, the innocent lives they had taken, and the people they had hurt. Captain Haddock felt a wave of guilt wash over him. He knew that he had to face his past and make amends for his actions. With Alejandro's help, Captain Haddock set out to find the descendants of the people he and Red Rackham had wronged. He wanted to apologize and make things right. It was a difficult journey, but Captain Haddock knew that it was the right thing to do. He had to confront his past and make amends if he ever wanted to find true redemption. Chapter 4: Apologies and Forgiveness. Captain Haddock and Alejandro traveled far and wide, searching for the descendants of the people Captain Haddock and Red Rackham had wronged. It was not an easy task, but they were determined to make amends. Finally, they found the descendants of one of the people Captain Haddock had hurt the most. It was a young woman named Maria, whose grandfather had been killed by Captain Haddock and Red Rackham during a raid on his ship. Captain Haddock was nervous as he approached Maria, unsure of how she would react. But he knew that he had to apologize and make things right. He told her about his past and how he regretted the things he had done. He apologized for the pain he had caused her family and asked for her forgiveness. Maria listened intently and then surprised Captain Haddock by forgiving him. She told him that she had spent her entire life hating him and Red Rackham for what they had done, but now that she had met him, she realized that he was not the same person he had been back then. Captain Haddock was grateful for Maria's forgiveness, but he knew that there were still others he needed to apologize to. He and Alejandro continued on their journey, meeting with other descendants and making amends for their past actions. As they traveled, Captain Haddock began to feel a sense of peace that he had never felt before. He realized that by facing his past and making amends, he was freeing himself from the guilt and shame that had plagued him for so long. He also realized that forgiveness was a powerful thing. By seeking forgiveness and offering apologies, he was not only making amends for his past mistakes, but he was also helping others find closure and healing. Captain Haddock knew that his journey was far from over, but he was grateful for the progress he had made. He was becoming the man he had always wanted to be, a man who was honest, kind, and compassionate, a man who was worthy of his son's love and respect. Chapter 5: A Father and Son Reunited. As Captain Haddock and Alejandro continued their journey, they grew closer with each passing day. They talked about their hopes and dreams, their fears and doubts, and the bond between them grew stronger. Captain Haddock was grateful to have Alejandro by his side. He realized that he had missed out on so much by not being there for his son. But he was determined to make up for lost time. One day, as they sailed across the ocean, Alejandro pointed to a small island in the distance. "That's where we're headed," he said. Captain Haddock looked at the island and saw that it was covered in lush green forests and sparkling blue waters. It was a beautiful place, but he couldn't help feeling a bit apprehensive. "What's on the island?" he asked. "My mother," Alejandro replied. Captain Haddock's heart skipped a beat. He had not seen his ex-wife, Alejandro's mother, in years. He had always regretted the way things had ended between them, but he had been too proud to reach out and make things right. Now, as they sailed towards the island, Captain Haddock felt a sense of nervous anticipation. He didn't know what to expect, but he hoped that he could make things right with his ex-wife and start to build a relationship with his son. As they docked on the island, Captain Haddock saw a figure walking towards them. It was a woman with long, dark hair and bright, welcoming eyes. It was Alejandro's mother. Captain Haddock took a deep breath and stepped forward to greet her. "Hello," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. "It's good to see you." Alejandro's mother smiled warmly at him. "It's good to see you too, Haddock," she replied. They talked for hours, catching up on old times and reminiscing about the past. Captain Haddock apologized for the way things had ended between them, and she forgave him. As the sun began to set, Alejandro's mother suggested that they have a family dinner together. She cooked a delicious meal, and they sat around the table, talking and laughing as if they had never been apart. For the first time in years, Captain Haddock felt truly happy. He was surrounded by the people he loved, and he knew that he had a second chance to be the father and husband he had always wanted to be. Chapter 6: A Promise Kept. As the days passed on the island, Captain Haddock spent every moment he could with Alejandro and his mother. They went on hikes through the forest, swam in the ocean, and explored the small town nearby. One day, as they were walking along the beach, Alejandro turned to his father and said, "Dad, do you remember the promise you made me when I was little?" Captain Haddock furrowed his brow, trying to remember what promise he was referring to. Then, it hit him. "You mean the promise to take you on a sailing adventure?" he asked. Alejandro's face lit up with excitement. "Yes, that's the one," he exclaimed. Captain Haddock felt a pang of guilt. He had promised to take his son on a sailing adventure when he was young, but he had never followed through on it. He had been too busy with work and his own troubles to make time for his family. But now, he realized that he had a chance to make it right. "Let's do it," he said. "Let's go on a sailing adventure together." Alejandro's eyes widened in surprise. "Really?" he asked. Captain Haddock nodded. "Yes, really. It's time for me to keep my promise to you." Over the next few days, they prepared for their sailing adventure. They stocked the boat with food and supplies, made sure all the equipment was working properly, and charted a course for their journey. As they set sail, Captain Haddock felt a sense of joy and contentment that he had not felt in years. He was fulfilling a promise to his son, and he knew that their time together on the open ocean would be a memory that they would both treasure for the rest of their lives. As they sailed into the sunset, Alejandro turned to his father and said, "Thank you, Dad. This is the best adventure ever." Captain Haddock smiled and put his arm around his son's shoulders. "No, thank you, Alejandro," he said. "Thank you for giving me a second chance to be a father to you." Chapter 7: Facing the Past. As Captain Haddock and Alejandro sailed on their adventure, Captain Haddock couldn't help but reflect on his past mistakes. He had made so many wrong decisions and hurt so many people along the way. He knew that he could not change the past, but he could make amends for his mistakes. He turned to Alejandro and said, "Son, there's something I need to tell you." Alejandro looked up at his father, sensing the seriousness in his voice. "What is it, Dad?" he asked. Captain Haddock took a deep breath. "I haven't always been the best father to you. I made a lot of mistakes in the past, and I'm sorry for that." Alejandro looked at his father with surprise. He had never heard his father apologize before. "It's okay, Dad," he said. "I forgive you." Captain Haddock felt a weight lifted off his shoulders. "Thank you, Alejandro," he said. "That means a lot to me." As they continued their sailing adventure, Captain Haddock thought about the people he had hurt in the past. He knew that he needed to make amends with them as well. When they returned to the island, Captain Haddock made a list of the people he needed to apologize to. He met with each of them and said, "I'm sorry for what I've done. I want to make things right." Some of the people were hesitant to forgive him, but Captain Haddock persisted. He knew that he had to face the consequences of his actions and try to make amends in any way he could. Slowly but surely, Captain Haddock began to earn the trust and forgiveness of the people he had hurt in the past. He knew that he could not change the past, but he could work to make a better future. As he sat on the beach with Alejandro, watching the sunset, Captain Haddock felt a sense of peace that he had not felt in years. He had faced his past and was now working to make a better future for himself and his son. Chapter 8: A Father and Son Bonding. As they continued their journey, Captain Haddock and Alejandro found themselves growing closer than ever before. The shared experiences and adventures had brought them together in a way that Captain Haddock had never thought possible. They spent their days exploring the island, fishing, and learning from each other. Captain Haddock was amazed at how much his son had grown and how much he had to teach him. Alejandro, on the other hand, was grateful for the opportunity to spend time with his father. He had always felt like his father was distant and disconnected from him, but now he was getting to know the real him. One day, as they were fishing, Alejandro turned to his father and said, "Dad, can I ask you something?" "Of course, son," replied Captain Haddock. "Why did you leave me and Mom? Why did you never come back?" asked Alejandro, his voice barely above a whisper. Captain Haddock sighed. He had been dreading this conversation but knew that it was long overdue. "I left because I was lost, Alejandro. I was a mess, and I didn't know how to be a good father to you. But that's not an excuse. I should have never left, and I should have been there for you and your mother." Alejandro nodded, his eyes brimming with tears. "I'm just glad you're here now, Dad," he said, smiling weakly. Captain Haddock put his arm around his son's shoulder. "Me too, son. Me too." For the first time in years, Captain Haddock felt like he was finally making up for lost time. He was bonding with his son and learning to be the father that Alejandro deserved. As they continued their adventure, Captain Haddock knew that their relationship would only grow stronger, and he was excited to see what the future held for them. Chapter 9: Facing the Consequences. As their time on the island drew to a close, Captain Haddock and Alejandro knew that they would soon have to face the consequences of their actions. They had been gone for weeks, and the rest of the world had no idea where they were. Captain Haddock knew that he would have to explain everything to Tintin and the others when they returned. He had no idea how they would react or what kind of punishment they would face. But he was determined to face the consequences and make things right. He had come too far and learned too much to go back to his old ways. As they approached the port, Captain Haddock took a deep breath and prepared himself for the inevitable confrontation. When they finally docked, they were met by a furious Tintin, who had been worried sick about them. But as Captain Haddock explained everything that had happened, Tintin's anger turned to understanding and admiration. "I'm proud of you, Captain," said Tintin. "You've come a long way, and you've proven that it's never too late to make things right." The rest of the crew also welcomed them back warmly, relieved that they were safe and amazed at the transformation that Captain Haddock had undergone. Although they faced some repercussions for their actions, Captain Haddock and Alejandro knew that they had done the right thing. They had faced their mistakes head-on and had come out stronger and better for it. And as they sailed off into the sunset, Captain Haddock knew that he had finally found the redemption that he had been searching for all these years. Chapter 10: A Father and Son Reunited. As Captain Haddock and Alejandro sailed away from the island, they had a lot to discuss. For the first time in their lives, they were father and son, and they had a lot of catching up to do. Over the next few days, they talked about everything: their pasts, their hopes for the future, and most importantly, their relationship. Captain Haddock apologized for all the mistakes he had made as a father and promised to do better in the future. Alejandro, for his part, was grateful for the opportunity to get to know his father and to understand the struggles that had shaped his life. He also had a newfound respect for the man who had risked everything to save his life. As they sailed back to Europe, they made plans for the future. Captain Haddock wanted to retire from his life of adventure and spend more time with his family. Alejandro, meanwhile, was eager to start a new chapter of his life and find his place in the world. But no matter where their paths would lead them, they both knew that they would always have each other. They had been given a second chance at a relationship, and they were determined not to waste it. As they arrived back in port, they were met by a crowd of well-wishers, including Tintin, who had arranged a surprise party to welcome them home. It was a joyful and emotional reunion, and Captain Haddock knew that he had finally found the family that he had been searching for all his life. As the party continued late into the night, Captain Haddock looked around at the people he loved and smiled. He had finally found his redemption, and he knew that he would always have the support of his family and friends as he faced the challenges that lay ahead. Chapter 11: The Price of Redemption. Captain Haddock's newfound sense of purpose and his reconciliation with Alejandro were not the only changes that he experienced upon his return to Europe. He soon found himself facing another challenge, one that threatened to undermine all that he had accomplished in his journey of redemption. It began with a visit from an old enemy, Rastapopoulos, who had escaped from prison and was seeking revenge on the captain. Rastapopoulos had learned of Captain Haddock's efforts to redeem himself and saw it as an opportunity to exact his revenge. At first, Captain Haddock refused to be intimidated. He had faced many foes in his life and had always emerged victorious. But Rastapopoulos was not easily deterred. He began to make threats against Captain Haddock's family, including Alejandro, who had become a target due to his relationship with the captain. Captain Haddock knew that he could not let his past mistakes put his loved ones in danger. He had to find a way to neutralize Rastapopoulos and put an end to the threat once and for all. As he began to plan his next move, he realized that he would need the help of his friends. Tintin, Snowy, Professor Calculus, and the others had always been there for him in times of need, and he knew that he could count on them once again. Together, they hatched a plan to lure Rastapopoulos into a trap. It was a risky move, but they knew that they had to take the chance in order to protect their loved ones and ensure that Captain Haddock's redemption was not for naught. The plan worked, and Rastapopoulos was apprehended and sent back to prison. Captain Haddock breathed a sigh of relief, knowing that his family was safe and that he had successfully defended his honor and his legacy. But the experience had also taught him a valuable lesson. He had come to realize that redemption was not a one-time event, but an ongoing process. He would have to remain vigilant and work hard every day to stay true to his newfound sense of purpose and continue to be the father, friend, and hero that his loved ones deserved. As he reflected on his journey, Captain Haddock knew that it had been a difficult and sometimes painful road. But he also knew that it had been worth it. For the first time in his life, he had found a sense of peace and purpose, and he knew that he would never let it slip away again. Chapter 12: A Father's Legacy. With Rastapopoulos behind bars once again, Captain Haddock was finally able to fully embrace his role as a father to Alejandro. He knew that he had a lot of lost time to make up for, but he was determined to be there for his son and provide him with the guidance and support that he had missed out on for so many years. As they spent more time together, Captain Haddock began to share stories of his own childhood and his adventures with Tintin. Alejandro was fascinated by his father's tales of daring-do and bravery, and he began to see him in a new light. For his part, Captain Haddock was grateful for the opportunity to connect with his son in this way. He knew that he could never undo the mistakes of the past, but he was determined to create new memories and experiences that would help to build a stronger bond between them. As they talked, Captain Haddock also began to realize that his legacy as a father went far beyond just Alejandro. He had been an absentee father to his son, but he had also been a mentor and a hero to countless others over the years. He had helped to shape the lives of Tintin, Snowy, and the other members of his crew, and he had been a source of inspiration to people all over the world. With this realization came a renewed sense of purpose. Captain Haddock knew that he had a responsibility to use his experiences and his influence to make a positive impact on the world. He began to volunteer his time and resources to charitable organizations and causes that he believed in, and he encouraged his friends and family to do the same. As he looked back on his life, Captain Haddock knew that he had made many mistakes and had caused pain and suffering to those around him. But he also knew that he had the power to make things right, to build a better future for himself and for those he loved. With this newfound sense of purpose and legacy, Captain Haddock felt truly redeemed. He knew that he had come a long way since his days as a hard-drinking sailor, and he was proud of the man that he had become. And yet, he also knew that his journey was far from over. There would always be new challenges and obstacles to overcome, but he was ready to face them head-on, secure in the knowledge that he had the support of his loved ones and the strength of his own convictions. Chapter 13: A Family Reunited. As Captain Haddock continued on his path of redemption and self-discovery, he realized that there was one more important step he needed to take: reuniting with his own family. He had been estranged from his sister, Marlinspike, for many years, and he knew that he needed to reach out to her and make amends. He had missed her greatly over the years, but his shame and guilt had kept him from reaching out. With the encouragement of his son and his friends, Captain Haddock finally mustered the courage to write a letter to Marlinspike. In it, he apologized for his past behavior and expressed his desire to reconnect with her and her family. To his great surprise and relief, Marlinspike responded warmly to his letter. She was overjoyed to hear from him and eager to rekindle their relationship. They exchanged a few more letters and phone calls before finally deciding to meet in person. The reunion was emotional for both of them. They hugged each other tightly and cried tears of joy and relief. They spent hours catching up, reminiscing about their childhood and sharing stories about their lives since they last saw each other. As the evening wore on, Captain Haddock also had the opportunity to meet Marlinspike's family. He was introduced to his niece and nephew, who were young adults now, and he was struck by how much they resembled him and his sister when they were younger. They all sat down to a meal together, and Captain Haddock regaled them with stories of his adventures with Tintin and his crew. Marlinspike's husband and children were fascinated by his tales, and Captain Haddock was delighted to have an audience for his stories. As the night drew to a close, Captain Haddock realized that he had truly come full circle. He had been estranged from his family for so long, but now he was reunited with them and felt closer to them than ever before. He knew that he still had work to do to repair the damage that he had caused in the past, but he was filled with hope and optimism for the future. He had his son by his side, his friends to support him, and his family back in his life. With all of this, he felt ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Chapter 14: A New Beginning. With his past mistakes finally behind him and his family back in his life, Captain Haddock was ready for a new beginning. He knew that he had a lot of work to do to make up for lost time, but he was eager to take on the challenge. First on his list was his son. He knew that he had missed out on so much of his son's life, and he was determined to make it up to him. They started spending more time together, going on outings and adventures, and getting to know each other better. Captain Haddock also made it a priority to repair his relationships with his friends. He apologized to Tintin, Professor Calculus, and the others for his past behavior and thanked them for sticking by him even when he was at his worst. In turn, they welcomed him back with open arms, grateful to have their old friend back in their lives. They continued to go on adventures together, and Captain Haddock found that he was enjoying them more than ever before. As he looked around at his life, Captain Haddock realized that he had everything he had ever wanted: a loving family, supportive friends, and a sense of purpose and adventure. He had come so far from the angry, bitter man he had been when he first met Tintin. He knew that there would still be challenges ahead, but he was ready to face them head-on. He had learned from his mistakes, and he was determined to live the rest of his life with honor, integrity, and kindness. And so, Captain Haddock's journey of redemption came to a close. It had been a long and difficult road, but it was one that had ultimately led him to a better, happier life. He had faced his demons, made amends for his past mistakes, and found his place in the world. As he sat on the deck of his ship, looking out at the vast expanse of the sea, Captain Haddock smiled to himself. He was at peace with his past and excited for what the future held. He had come full circle, and he was ready for whatever adventures lay ahead. Chapter 15: The Legacy of Captain Haddock. Captain Haddock had come a long way from his days as a bitter, angry man. He had redeemed himself, made amends for his past mistakes, and had become a loving father and a loyal friend. But his impact went beyond his personal transformation. Captain Haddock had inspired many others with his journey of redemption. People who had been struggling with their own demons saw his story as a beacon of hope, a reminder that it was never too late to turn your life around. Many young people, in particular, looked up to Captain Haddock as a role model. They were inspired by his bravery, his determination, and his sense of adventure. They wanted to be like him, to go on adventures and face their own challenges with courage and determination. Captain Haddock's legacy was also evident in the world around him. The ships he had commanded were still sailing the seas, and the people he had helped along the way were still telling stories about the kind-hearted sea captain who had saved their lives. Even the people who had once been his enemies had come to respect him. They knew that Captain Haddock was a man of honor, and that he had always done what he believed was right, even if it meant going against them. And so, as Captain Haddock looked back on his life, he knew that he had left a lasting legacy. He had inspired others, made a difference in the world, and had lived a life that he could be proud of. As he sat on the deck of his ship, watching the sunset, Captain Haddock felt content. He knew that his life had been full of ups and downs, but he had come out the other side a better man. He had faced his demons, redeemed himself, and had made a difference in the world. And as he sailed off into the horizon, Captain Haddock knew that his legacy would live on, inspiring others to live their lives with courage, determination, and kindness. As the journey comes to an end, take a moment to appreciate all the beauty and wonder you have encountered. And know that you can always return to this place whenever you need a moment of rest and relaxation. Now, let yourself drift off into a deep and peaceful sleep, knowing that you are surrounded by love and the magic of nature. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to our channel to see more exciting adventures like this one. Thank you for watching. We hope you enjoyed our bedtime bliss stories. If you did, don't forget to like and share this video with your friends and family. Sweet dreams.